Go ahead and get started then. Welcome to tonight's work session. Today is Monday, August the 10th, 2020. The time is now 5 p.m. Welcome to the go-to meeting. Looks like we might have around 18 people, that includes all of us, join in the meeting. We'll welcome to order. And we have pretty much just one item is marijuana hospitality establishments. We're going to discuss again project updates, which Mr. Valentine will probably update us, and I see Mr. Beach is on as well, and discussion of any other agenda items that council would like to consider. So starting with the marijuana hospitality establishments, I know that we had this one discussion a couple of weeks ago. And, of course, at that time, there was a 4-3 vote to not move forward with it. Since that time, one council person has decided that he would like to have some additional discussion on it, which is actually very appropriate. There's nothing wrong with it. There can even be bring back motions even in a regular meeting. But as far as a meeting and as far as discussion over a work session, it's totally appropriate. So let's go ahead and get started with this. And I think the one person that had asked for further clarification, I think, was Mr. Williamson. Mr. Williamson, would you like to begin and see what your concerns are?
Mr. Mayor, I appreciate that. Being so new, I guess, at this point, I hope I can still claim that, new to City Council and all the workings of it. Something that has really struck me is the weight and importance of the decisions that we make. I mean, in a decision like this, I hope I'm okay to say there is no winners and there's no losers, but people feel very strongly on both sides of this matter. That's the unique position we are in a representative democracy. I mean, people have elected us to come here and make the decisions that are best for them. In this case, them is a complex system, a city, and we are city council staff are privy to more information than than say people on the street. None of us here on council have the luxury of making this decision lightly, meaning, I feel this way, therefore this is the decision I made. I mean, there is a lot of weight to this decision. The amount of monies that are generated by the marijuana industry, whether you care for it, whether you don't care for it, is irrelevant. It is a, the toothpaste is out of the tube, we can't put it back. We just need to take steps towards making sure that this decision is the best decision for everybody in Trinidad when viewed from every possible facet that we can view it from. And I wouldn't say all facets. You're not able to view the decision from every facet, but at least let's view the decision from the majority of it. Therefore, I feel really strongly that based on the amount of revenue that this generates for the city, the implications that it may or may not have on that revenue stream, I feel it behooves us to have further discussion. That being said, it's my opinion that a decision of this magnitude, it would be, in my opinion, really good to bring it to a point where we can have open discussion and input from community members. That's involved community members. That is my feeling. that's where I am, and that's my opening statement.
Okay. Well, we had a lot of discussion last time. I don't know if council wants to regurgitate, what we discussed last time, any additional information that you may have. With that, we'll start with Mr. Goodall.
You bet. I've always got something to say, and on this subject, I've got a lot to say. So I'm gonna go back over again on the pros of the marijuana and why I feel it's important that we go down this road and look at consumption clubs, or at least a social setting for people to consume marijuana. So being in the unique position of having a motel and an RV park, and since marijuana has been legalized, to see the impact it is on my business and how that has progressed. It started out as a business where my park filled up, and for 2 years I hung a no vacancy sign. People sold all their belongings in other states. They moved into my park while they looked for property, while they built a house, or while they bought a house. Then they moved into our community, and it was strictly for the marijuana. To where we're at now, where people are coming into this park, and I have 50 years old, 60-year-olds, 70-year-olds, and I have one gentleman, 84 years old, who comes into my park in his RV, and he goes and parks, and he comes to my office, and I have an 84-year-old gentleman standing in front of me and tells me, so on my McDonald's budget, where can I buy the best marijuana? And this is an 84-year-old gentleman that's coming to our community. And I see these people coming to our town to consume marijuana because the people of the older generations are fearful of traveling back across state lines to their states where you cannot possess or consume marijuana, so they come here strictly to consume it. I feel it's important for us to explore this because if we have a community north of us that gets totally on board with this, that offers a service that we don't offer, I feel we're in jeopardy of having the people start to bypass this community and go to a community that welcomes their money, not only to just buy marijuana and leave, but to stay in their community, spend their money over weekends, and offer them a setting in which they can consume the marijuana. I never envisioned this, a consumption club, being a place where these 20 and 30-year-olds that come here, because they come strictly to buy their marijuana and take it home. I look at it as targeting the age group in the 40s and 50s, 60s, 70-year-olds, not only coming to our town to buy marijuana looking for a place to consume and then recreate in our area, but I look as the gentleman that we had speak on this and how his clubs are working elsewhere. Instead of this sip and paints where you have puff and paints, different settings where people could go out in a social gathering and consume marijuana as they do in a bar. And the final point that I really want to make, and I'm really adamant about, is how can anybody sit here and say you are behind having bars in this community where people can go and drink, but you are not willing to allow people to come here and buy marijuana and have a place they can consume? I feel it is very hypocritical. And so I've said what I have to say, and we'll let it go from there.
Okay. Ms. Ogletree?
Okay. I appreciate what's already been said by the other council members. I especially appreciate what Mr. Williams had said about needing input from interested parties. I would really like, before we made any decision about this, to hear if the individuals in the marijuana industry in this city have an interest in exploring this marijuana hospitality establishment of any kind and how they would propose to do it. I think that would really help us to tamp down the wild fears that have been raised, because I think we'd go, oh, okay, so that's how it could be done. I think it's inappropriate of us to make a decision without hearing from them. I'd also like to hear from Wally Wallace in economic development, because he has his ear to the ground in terms of expansion of this industry and how it would affect us economically. And I thought we were remiss to not hear from him last time. He offered to jump in, and we did not allow him to speak, and I thought that was wrong. I simply have always felt like that we should have a place that people can consume marijuana legally and safely in the city. I'm glad the state made a law that allows it, because now if somebody is, if we put this into place and the police ran across somebody who was using marijuana outside such an establishment, they could direct them and say, there are places you can go, but you cannot do it here. Right now, we have absolutely nothing going on. Honestly, as far as I can tell, we're just turning our heads and looking the other way, and I just don't think that's a wise course of action.
Okay, anything else?
No, not at this time. Maybe something later.
Ms. Grego?
Well, I agree with everybody that's, the three councilmen that have spoke before me. I just didn't feel like it was right to vote on something, number one, in a work session. Number two, I think the subject should be brought to a regular council meeting. Let people that have feelings one way or the other to present it to us. And I understand where everybody else is coming from, but my direction on supporting this comes from a whole different perspective, I guess, because I've sat here for almost 3 years on city council, and the city has reaped enormous rewards financially and with an influx of human beings into this community because of the pot industry. They've proven themselves to be good neighbors. They're good business people. They're responsible. Why do we have to deny them at least the chance, if they want to take that further step into enhancing their businesses? I think if the state allows it, I think Trinidad should do it too. You know, I think all this brouhaha has something to do with stereotyping people that consume marijuana. You know, I've been to places, I've been to wine country in San Francisco. You can go to any winery you want to and sit and drink until you can't stand up. And nobody looks down on that. I'm not advocating people come to consumption clubs and get trot so high that they can't control themselves. But I'm just trying to put some perspective on this, because I was in Puerto Vallarta, the first thing you do is you do this tequila tour, you know, and it's a region that's famous for that specific product. If it's done responsibly and sensibly, I have not a problem with it. And I'm one of the council people that wanted this back on the agenda tonight. And it's because I think it's maybe if there's a chance to compromise with the other members of council that are not in favor, you know, if there's something that really bothers them about this that can be rectified, I think we need to talk about it. You know, when we talked about it the last time, I know a couple of us made our feelings known, but the people that were opposed to it, you know, there wasn't conversation between us. Granted, it's really hard on these go-to meetings to communicate properly, but I don't think we had a true discussion. We said what our feelings were, and that was the end of that, and I think we need to come back and address this again, and I think it should be in a regular meeting. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Mr. DeBono?
Am I still muted?
No, I can hear you.
Okay, I agree with a lot of the council members in one capacity. A proper model needs to be presented to council, and the safety and responsibility, like Councilwoman Grego stated is very imperative, and I still don't. I just want to find out if the cons are going to outweigh the benefits, and if someone presents a proper model to the city council, maybe the decisions can be turned. But I'd like to hear more about it. And intangibles, I'm not quite sure about the intangibles to being in favor. You know, just like with the liquor establishments, I'm just not for that. So right now, I'm not going to change my decision.
Would it be possible to hear what some of your safety concerns are?
Yeah, security measures and proper ventilation and just things like that.
Mr. Williamson, do you have any additional comments?
You know, I feel very, very strongly that this needs to be fully heard out. As several people have stated, they would like to see input from both concerned parties. And I'm going to share this. As Councilwoman Grego mentioned, she feels the proper place to do that is a actual city council meeting. That's my opinion as well, because you know, while we may have concerns right now that could be addressed by people right that are on the call immediately, what I really want to avoid, and this is just me thinking right now, what I would really like to avoid is any appearance of having a situation set up where people could point to this on the internet and say, hey, go watch that city council work session. It was a situation that was created so that people speaking for the consumption clubs were able to speak their mind, and there was no dissenting opinion. I just think it would bode a lot better for everybody involved if it went to a public hearing and both sides were given fair notice to appear and have their time to try and convince the other side, and then that way, I think that it will be the most transparent, most clear-minded, and neither side can say to the other, well, they have a leg up. I have a lot of questions. I mean, ranging from, you know, we can look up how much money was generated in 2019 and to the most current date in 2020. Is there any way to forecast what sort of retail creep we might have if, say, Pueblo opened one and we do not? I think personally that's probably a hard number to forecast, if not impossible. I know there's been a lot of discussion about things. Is the consumption club a place where you go and you buy some amount of marijuana from that purveyor and use it there? Or is it a place that is open to using the marijuana that you walk in with? Because to Councilwoman Ogletree's point, if we find someone sitting on the road and they're doing their thing there, and we tell them, hey, you can go down there, I mean, their response may be, well, I have to buy more, I don't care to buy more, I want this particular. I know that's a minor, that's very minor, but this really is not a one-size-fits-all solution. Another, two more points. I really would prefer to see it set up for a public hearing for people that have spoken to me that are against it, that they'll feel better about that, I think. And the other question that I had, I apologize, Mayor, it's evaded me. I'm sure it'll come back to me. I would like to ask Mr. Downs and other council people, you know, I think something that does not sit well in the community, and sorry, this is probably a sore subject, and I I'm remiss to bring it up. I apologize. But I think we need to. You know, there is a limit of outlets here that we have, and we actually have a higher number of outlets than our limit is, and it may be beneficial for that to be explained on this meeting as a matter of public record. I don't know. But my point is, if we come up with some number that we find acceptable, how do we, in very hard terms, Mr. Downs, guarantee that we do not exceed that? Say we decide as a council 2. Can we hold it to 2? Is there means to get around that? That's my question.
Councilman Williamson, if I could please, Mayor, you can absolutely hold the number to 2, and I will tell you the history of the number of the retail marijuana stores in Trinidad. There initially was going to be a cap. There was going to be a set number. And then after that, and we began taking applications. I told you guys the other day, there were people lining up in the middle of the night waiting to get into City Hall when we opened. But anyway, that kind of idea was dispensed with because it was decided that like free market economic forces would be better. And so we kind of removed the cap and allowed there to be more. We didn't realize there were going to be so many. So whatever the maximum number was, I want to say 26 stores, approximately. I may be wrong on that, but about 26. Once there were that many, it was decided that there should be a cap. And rather than having the cap be higher than the existing number of stores, we had the cap be lower, so that when natural attrition occurred on marijuana stores, it would go down 26, 25, 24, and no one could apply for a new license until the number was down to 19. So there were 20 stores, you're still at the cap. Once one of the 20 would go out of business, then you would have a vacancy, you'd have room under the cap, and someone could apply for that license. So that's why the cap is under the number of stores that we have right now. And I have a number of other points, but I'll wait, because I don't want you to not call me in the future and be accused of. But there are a number of points that I want to make about meetings and work sessions and whether or not there was a vote taken on the earlier work session, which there was not. But I'm going to be quiet.
I did want to be clear about that to you and the rest of council and staff. I was not in any way intending to say that there was any wrongdoing. I think it's good as a matter of public record that process be explained. That's my feeling.
Okay, I'm going to mention something. I think Ms. Grego brought it up. I think it was her. That a vote was taken, and we generally take a vote in some sense or another on a consensus vote on a lot of issues. This one being a little bit more difficult to deal with, but we usually have to take a consensus as to the feeling of council before it moves on to an ordinance or a next meeting. That's usually the process. So consensus usually tells staff move forward, tells Mr. Downs to move forward. The last meeting that we had, the consensus was 4-3 and not to move forward. So that's simple enough. My concern is we do have the cap, like Mr. Downs had mentioned, and there are some of these that may be a possibility as far as the consumption club that would possibly go into an establishment that is already there, which would include sales. So my concern with that is I believe that opens up a challenge to the cap. It's a legal thing that I believe that, let's say we decided to do 2, and all the others come forward and they say, now I want to challenge your cap. That, I believe that could be open, and that's very concerning to me. If we decided to move forward with 1 or 2 or 3, how will we pick those 1 or 2 or 3? Now, that being said, there could be a few of us on council that may want to have only 2, but let's say we have 4 council people that decide that they want to go further and have 5, 6, or more. So, when it comes to a vote, or it comes to discussion as to how many people want to have, I think it opens it up to having way too many, like what happened with the marijuana that we have now. Like Mr. Downs said, it was unlimited when I came on board as mayor in 2016, which we proceeded to have a cap. At that time, we had up to 40-some applications that were out there, and of course it was whittled down to where we're at now. So how will we pick? And is that challengeable? That's the other thing.
Mayor?
Yes.
Could I respond to that, please?
Yes.
Thank you. I'd like to remind you guys of a little bit of history. I don't remember the name of the facility. I know some of the council members who are on now were not on at the time. But do you guys remember that hearing that we did where I kind of blew it up and went insane and objected to everything? Remember that? Councilman Goodall obviously does. I can see him laughing. So I told you guys that they didn't have a leg to stand on. They didn't have an applicant. They didn't have all kinds of things. I told you there's not going to be a Rule 106 proceeding. There's not going to be anything that goes on after that. It's a slam dunk, and it's going to be over and done. And a number of council members were concerned, like, I don't know. Well, of course, and I'm sorry, but I was absolutely right. And I would just like to say that legally, this is not going to affect in any way, shape, or form the cap on the retail marijuana store. And lest any of you think that we were forced into lifting the cap somehow, there was some kind of legal loophole, or we were pressured, or there was something we overlooked. That is not what happened at all. It was a premeditated, I know that sounds disparaging, but it was a conscious, absolute decision. Councilmember Miles was a very persuasive councilwoman, and having the Stanford MBA and all that, and she prevailed on the other council members at the time to lift the cap and said, let's see what happens. Let's have Trinidad make more money. And so it was absolutely a decision to do that. Okay, to lift, there was a set number of 5 or 6, and that's what council had done, and that's how we were proceeding. And then council absolutely decided to lift that cap and let everyone come in who wanted to have a marijuana business. And we were talking about more application fees, more marijuana tax, all those things that actually panned out and were proven to be correct. But in no way were we forced to increase the cap, and in no way would having hospitality businesses in any way, shape, or form be pigeonholed. And if that were the case, they would automatically be illegal because they would violate our cap. But it's a separate, in other words, you couldn't have any more if they were the same as retail marijuana stores. But they're a completely different license type. And they are not, you can set a cap, you can say, I only want 2, or I want 2 of the kind where they sell marijuana in the business, and I want 2 that don't, for a grand total of 4. You can do that and stand on that, and only if council decides to change that number, does that number get changed? Thank you, Mayor. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Well, that brings me to a question: is how many? I've yet to hear from any of the council people how many shops they would like to have. You know, I've mentioned a couple, if at all. But let me go ahead and finish. One thing is, I've been thinking about this, and I still really don't see a huge benefit to the city of Trinidad. I really don't see it. The marijuana industry that we have now is a huge benefit, and that's pretty well set in stone. That was pretty well evident when it was voted on, and that was before I came on as mayor. But it was pretty obvious that there was some money to generate. This one here, I really don't know. It might generate a few bucks, but I don't really know if it's going to generate that much. The other thing I want to mention is there's one other community in the state of Colorado that has taken up consumption codes. Only one. Denver, Colorado took one only, I think. But I forget if it was Glendale or who next took. I'm not sure how many they've authorized. But why is it that nobody else is taking up the hospitality? I really don't understand why. You would think that if there was really a benefit, you would think that they would be jumping all over it. Those communities that have marijuana, which there are quite a few now, and some have been around a while. And I just don't see where, I don't understand why they've not jumped on board to say, yeah, let's go for it. Evidently they're seeing something that maybe those of us that maybe are not in favor. But it baffles me. Ms. Ogletree, you have your hand up.
Respectfully, Mayor, I think those kind of decisions about what possibly we could have that would be beneficial can only be made with more information. And that's why I think we need to hear from people from the marijuana industry about, okay, A, how many do they think we should have? Because this is an industry that we don't want to destabilize. So we should get input from that industry about what they think, how many might be helpful, how it would impact their businesses. I don't think we can make those decisions in a vacuum or just based on our ability to comprehend why there might not be. I don't know why other cities have not taken the state up on this as they might. I think that we have the opportunity to lead in this area like we have led in the number of shops that we have. And we've been an example to, I think, the state in terms of our financial stability that we've gained from that. I think we have to get more information before we make decisions. And I don't know that information just comes from our own heads. I think it comes from people in the industry.
Well, as far as that goes, you got to remember is that we make decisions in a vacuum all the time. We have work. There's a lot of we have a lot of decisions that we make solely on looking at the benefits or not the benefits of what is best for our community. So we do that all the time. Mr. Goodall, you have your hand raised.
I don't want to cut Ms. Ogletree off if she wasn't done speaking, Mayor.
Okay.
I just wanted to say that I think it's always a good idea to make decisions with more information rather than less. And yes, we do have to make judgment calls, but I think you make the best judgment calls with the most information.
So are you done? I'm sorry.
Yes, thank you.
I just have two things. I did in my initial comment in our last work session on this, did lay out what I thought would be a prototype in Albany. I said I thought there should be one shop to try it and see if it works. It should work under a lottery system that we set up, how the businesses that are in place, if they wish, can earn points to be, and then we decide off of a lottery system who gets the one store. I've always said that I don't agree with or would support carrying your own marijuana and smoke it. I always thought to make it a profitable situation, it should always be a business that sells a limited amount so that you can control the amount of marijuana people are smoking while they're there. And the one other person we haven't heard a word from that I would love to hear what they have to say about it is our city manager and what his opinion is on this.
Mr. Valentine, we have a council person that would like to hear your opinion.
Sure, I appreciate it. I am on the fence, I'll say that. I have, I came from the age group where it was illegal, and that still kind of creeps in every once in a while to do this. But with everything that's happened and how it's going and the economic benefits and, the opportunity to not just sell it to people and say, buy it and thank you and see you later. They could stay, experience the community, and possibly, Fisher's Peak. There's just so much happening here that if this enhances economic development, it would help. It would help, and I would, if you make the analogy of bars where people come out drunk, or marijuana where people come out high, what's safer? I don't know. We afford one opportunity, but not the other. So I'm also of the opinion of, if it's such a great thing, then why haven't more done it? And I know it's new, so that is a wishy-washy answer. I get it. That's where I'm at. I'm really conflicted. So yeah.
May I add?
Sure.
Trinidad isn't Denver. That's obvious. But, what we have in Trinidad with the shops, the concentration of shops in 2 areas in downtown Trinidad, it works. And you've got to understand, and I'm sorry, I have to keep saying this, but I got to remind you guys, I'm down here in the thick of things with the pot shops. You cannot believe the foot traffic that I see that have traveled from the pot shop to the other businesses in downtown Trinidad. I owned a tourist-related business for many years, and what happened in Trinidad, the reason why it didn't flourish like it's doing now is because those tourists stayed on Interstate 25. What I'm getting at is the pot shops got people off that interstate, brought them down to downtown Trinidad. They say the beauty of the architecture down here, and they're able to experience what we have been seeing all of our lives, or for how long we've been here. The point is, the marijuana business has given us an opportunity to flourish, not only with the taxes, but I see people coming to downtown Trinidad that would have never come down here otherwise. Why can't we be good neighbors? If it's legal and they think they can do it, at least give them a shot. It's not up to me or anybody else on council to figure out if they're going to make money. That's their business people. They're going to make that decision whether they can or not. I don't think it works in Denver because there's so many other things to do in Denver. But I really don't know why. I'm just concerned about if it would work in Trinidad. And really what I'm saying is the pot shops have been good for Trinidad. Why not give that opportunity to them? If that's what they want to do. If they don't, that's fine.
Mr. Williamson, did you have your hand raised, Mr. Williamson?
I did. I had a question. I believe it's probably germane to this discussion. Hypothetically, if a business was issued a license for a consumption club and it caused carnage that we didn't foresee, how is that process to remove that license? Les, what is that process?
We would cite them and we would have them go before you as the licensing authority. If there are violations of the code, or also we could have the Department of Revenue involved. But there are ways that we control the local license for these kinds of things. Of course, MED controls the state license, but we have basically all the power of a licensing agency. We've done many things with respect to marijuana stores when there have been violations. There haven't been many, but that's what we do. We as the local licensing authority have the power to punish them if there are violations, including revoking their local license if, like you say, there's carnage. You know.
I said unforeseen carnage.
Okay, I'm sorry. The unforeseen carnage. That's what.
Mr. Downs, you said you had a few more points that you wanted to.
I do.
Did you want to cover those now?
Mayor, thank you. Yes, just really quickly, and thank you. I wanted to say that, to go back to an earlier point, I'm sorry, you guys can have public comment at a work session. And we really haven't done that, and I understand that. We wanted to have council, sound off on this, but I do want to say that you can have public comment. And Mayor, you were spot on when you said that, like the last meeting, it was to get consensus in terms of what direction council wanted to go. And if there isn't a majority to take something forward, then you might as well let it die on the vine at that point in time. That was a minor point, and but I wanted to say that. Another thing I wanted to say is, this is brand new. And by the way, there are 3 communities that have done this: Glendale, Denver, and Colorado Springs. Denver and Colorado Springs, as I said before, are only doing the hospitality businesses without sales, and Glendale is the only municipality that is allowing the hospitality business with sales. So there's only one. But I mean, I sometimes get forgetful. Wasn't it just this year that this passed the legislature? And what we were talking about was the House bills and House bills and House bills is now law. Some of the law that I gave you is now, in Colorado revised statute. So that's point number 1 as to why they haven't done that. Point number 2 is, I used to be stuck on the notion that this was not going to make money for the city of Trinidad, and I would always say, well, why do it if it's not going to make money? And I don't think it is going to make much money for us as a taxing agency or entity, but what it is it's cultural. And if you look, and I hate to say that this is part of our culture now, but it is. And one of the reasons why MED has kind of like been dancing around the issue and saying, hey, Trinidad, this is out there, and we'll come down and have chats with you. We don't want you to think that we're a proponent for this, but we want to make sure you can do it, because we're the MED, and we'll allow this kind of thing. We are a community on the border with, about 25 retail marijuana stores making millions of dollars a month in marijuana, in retail marijuana sales. And so what this does is, it kind of, because so much of what we are, a community of 8,500 people making so much money off of retail marijuana sales, it kind of is a logical extension to what we're doing and how we're getting our money. I mean, I want to sound like I'm advocating for this, it's not my job, but that's what it is, and that's why, now that it's allowed and it's legal with the state of Colorado, why people are looking at us and saying, if it's going to happen anywhere, that's the place where it should happen. That's the place where it should happen. And that, I think, is the case.
Yeah, Mr. Downs, I just wanted to mention something to you. In a sense, it does sound like you're advocating, and I don't want that to happen, so just be careful. You know, I think that we have heard all that we needed to hear. At this point, I think we just need to take a consensus as to where do we go with this. Yes, Miss Ogletree.
Mayor, the last time that we met, Wally Wallace offered to bring in some information about economic benefit. If he's on the line, I would really like to hear from him before we make any consensus decision. We're no further along than we were the last time we discussed this. We don't have any hard facts from anyone in the marijuana industry. We don't have any discussion about what we might do to address any safety issues. We don't have any information from our economic development person. I think that's inappropriate.
Well, I hear what you're saying. However, I do know that Wally, I'm not sure, hopefully I'm wrong, but I don't know if he may be a little bit biased. He does have a friend that is buying property locally to do this. So I don't know if that would be of any consideration. But I just wanted to bring just wanted to bring that up.
That's not true.
Okay.
I just want to say.
Mayor, can I make a recommendation? This is Audra.
Sure.
So there's several members of City Council that want both proponents and opponents of this measure to be voiced by everyone in the public that would like to do that. Why don't we set up a public meeting and broadcast it so that everyone has that opportunity? We're nowhere near a point where we can take an ordinance to a city council meeting and have a public hearing on it because the details are not in that document yet where everybody has a good comfort level. So I really think a public meeting and everyone has the opportunity to speak is the most appropriate approach.
Well, I agree with you, and as a matter of fact, that was going to be my recommendation. Is that I think that we needed to have a public forum on this because we still have some time on this. We don't have to make this decision right now. There's a lot of feelings both ways, and the only way we're going to get to the bottom of this is that we have public opinion. So I think that that's probably the best thing at this point in time would be to just get public opinion, put it out there. The one thing I want to recommend and mention to council, and I know that some of you in council may know of people who want this, some other marijuana industries, but I think that we advertise this as a public forum, and that if someone calls you and talks to you about it, you basically saying we're going to have a public forum on it, and leave it at that. I don't want any kind of solicitation of any kind, because then it just creates more issues. With that, I think that that's probably the consensus. Let's go around. I know Ms. Ogletree understands that. I think Mr. Goodall feels that way. Ms. Gregel feels that way. Mr. DeBono, what are your thoughts?
No, I'm still need to be shown a model, and I need to know about the legalities, the liabilities, the security, the ventilation, and the safety concerns and the responsibility of the people that are going to do this.
Okay, do you think that could be done in a public forum? Would that
Possibly.
that's what I'm asking for, is if you feel you have some unanswered questions, and do you feel like those that would be that would be the proper avenue?
Proper avenue, yes, sir.
Okay. Mr. Williamson. Mr. Williamson?
I agree with the public hearing. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, Mayor.
Okay. Ms. Gregor?
I'm in agreement with the public meeting too, but we've shunned Mr. Wallace twice now. Can we hear what he has to say after we take this consensus?
Well, I think the consensus has already been set. as far as, from what I'm hearing, is that everybody would like to have a public forum on this. But Mr. Wallace, go ahead.
Honestly, today, and I have a list of things I'm going to say, but at first I want to make at least one correction to what you just said a moment ago. I do have multiple friends that are investing in this community. None of them that are like my friends have any intention of opening a cannabis consumption club.
Okay.
I believe I have one friend in general that you may have the impression is just because of his background. But he has made it very clear that he is 100% divested from the cannabis industry in Colorado and has no interest in opening a location like this. That being said, if he owned a property and was approached by a business owner that would like to lease one of his properties and do something like this, he may be open to it.
Okay.
But in that sense, it's no different than any other industry out there. Any other industry that had a good business model, what they'd like to do, would like to use one of those properties, he'd be open to it. I am totally fine with you taking this to a public forum to hear further on my thoughts of it. My biggest thing is just from an economic development perspective, two of the biggest points that I've gotten from this conversation is, for one thing, that Mr. Mayor, you don't see the benefit of this to your community, of our community. And I would agree to an extent in the short term that you won't see a huge amount of tax revenue coming in from these places. It'll take a little while to figure out how to operate them. But I personally am much more concerned with 2 to 3 years from now when New Mexico legalizes. And if we do not build a hospitality infrastructure that makes people want to come here and spend time here and enjoy our community, rather than driving to Tucumcari and purchasing stuff and driving back across the Texas border, then they're not going to come here. We're going to be cut off at the pass. And so though you may not see the immediate sales tax revenue from consumption clubs, I believe that if we don't make our community more welcoming to those people, they just won't be coming here in 2 years. And they won't be, our tax revenue from dispensaries will drop from, 1.2 million in a quarter to significantly lower than that if we give them the impression that they are not welcome in our community. And certain things that were said at the last council meeting definitely, I believe, when put out to the public, give that perception. Specifically when one council member said, we want them to come here and buy, and then we want them to leave. We don't need them staying here for the weekend. We don't need them doing that stuff here. For one thing, knowing that a lot of our business is coming from across the border, it's basically saying that we don't want to create safe places for you to go. We want you to participate in illegal activity, smuggling this back to wherever you're coming from. It should be somewhat of an obligation for us to prioritize creating safe environments here. And I agree with Eli DeBono and the fact that we do need to figure out what is safe for these establishments. But really, this is the opportunity to do that. The state isn't putting restrictions on what you can't restrict them to do. They are putting ones of what you must do to restrict, and then you add on to that. So you can make them have bouncers, you can make them have filtration systems, all of that is your decision. I just don't want you all to not talk about this. If you vote against it, that is totally your personal opinion and part of why you were voted in, to represent your community based upon what your information and your opinion is. But to just shut it down and not move forward with having a conversation about that, I think would be detrimental to the economic future of this community. And so I'll leave it at that. I have more that I can add in a public forum, but that is the most important key.
Okay. Well, with that, I think Audra, Mike, staff, whoever has to set up a public forum, possibly for the next work session. Mike, do you have anything for the next work session that would take precedence?
Mayor, I think this is the topic. We need to facilitate the public forum. We'll talk internally on how that goes, but next work session would be the 24th of August in 2 weeks. If that works for council, we'll get something put together.
I would just say, I'm just speaking for myself here, I'm sure, but I just wanted to ensure I'm earning my city council stipend with these discussions.
Being that this is such a volatile subject and concern by both sides of the aisle on this, both sides of the party, my recommendation is that I know that we will post it as a work session item, but being that this is such a big issue, that I think that maybe we need to put it in the newspaper a couple of times so that the public will know. Because that's one thing that has always bothered me, is that when something of major discussion comes up, people either decide not to do it or they say later, I didn't hear about it. So I think the best thing to do is let's give them an opportunity to know about it, and that is through whether it's Facebook, if that's we have a Facebook account. How do we do this? So his staff,
Also,
Mike, you and staff, if you would.
That's a good idea.
See what you could do. Mr. DeBono, what did you have something to say?
I have access to the radio station, sir.
Okay, and that would be a good forum to put it out. So once that, get together with Mike and Audra and staff, see if they have any information or language that they would like you to use on the radio.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. All right.
There's certain words the FCC will not allow us to use.
Okay.
Pertaining to marijuana.
Okay. Good. All right.
Would this the public session, then it would obviously be in the same format this meeting is?
Yes.
I mean, that's I would anticipate we'll probably have a lot of callers. I think that might be quite a meeting to wrangle. I do know that some of these meetings you can mute every line that is called in right from the get-go. I think hopefully we might be able to look into that and then have some way for people to announce that they want to speak. Maybe we could even generate that list ahead of time and we call on those people.
That would be a good idea.
It's likely to be a zoo.
Yeah,
That's a good idea.
That is a good idea. And Audra, like I said, Audra, you and staff could probably come up with some kind of a way to identify these people who would want to speak. Okay.
Correct. We'll set up some rules, and we'll definitely vet this process out. Go-to meetings, Zoom meetings are tough, and we'll initially, I think, like was suggested, request a list, and we'll queue them as they come in. We'll give them 3 minutes, 5 minutes. We'll announce who's up and who's next to be ready, and we will mute and unmute as Mr. Williamson suggests for starters, and hopefully we can get it'll be a lively discussion where people will want to jump in, but we'll monitor.
Thank you for your effort. That's a heavy lift.
I do know that I've been on some Zoom meetings where I've had to call in, and they say, who are you? Do you have a particular item that maybe you want to talk about? Of course, this is a single topic, and then when their time comes up, like you said, they are led into the conversation. So that can happen, I believe. Okay, let's go on to next item number 2, project updates. Mr. Valentine, do you have some project updates for us?
Actually, we do, Mayor, and part of the reason is I know at our CIP discussion there was a lot of talk about let's get some projects done. So I'm hoping Tom Beach is still out there. He's just going to go down a list of the projects that are out there that are being done, and just to get council up to date on everything that you approve and never hear about again. So Tom Beach.
Thank you, Mike. Mayor, members of council, good evening. I would like to bring you up to date on some of our projects. Last time I did this, Mr. Riego kind of fell asleep on me, but I'll try to keep her awake. it gets kind of in depth and went on for quite a while. Sorry, Gary. If you don't mind, we really have several projects. We have a huge whiteboard out in the hallway here at the annex. You've probably not seen that. That has all of our projects that are underway or have a number. Each project we do has a project number assigned to it, with the number, chronological number, and then the year. If you don't mind, I'd like to just do that. If you lose me back and forth with my phone, because I am on my cell phone, I'm going to be walking back and forth between my office and the hallway out there. If you don't mind, I'll get started. If you have any questions, please feel free to interrupt or ask, and I'll try to answer the best I can.
Why didn't you just take a picture of the board to start with?
28 lines is really small.
Sorry, Tom.
I thought about putting it on my screen, but no, that won't work.
You said ask any questions.
The pertinent questions, let me put it that way. Excuse me. Okay, our oldest numbered project is the Old Silvers Trail Boulevard Addition. As you guys know, that's down in the Boulevard Park. It's nearing completion. We're 99%, 95% complete. The only thing we have left actually is paving to do. We're waiting on the contractor, is waiting on the subcontractor to do some paving. And we have a contract modification order to alter the final waterway on the east end here by the pedestrian bridge that we installed. And that is in CDOT's hands at the moment. I sent that off to them the other day to get the update on that project going for the contract modification. The next one is our 03-2017 sewer slip lining project. This is a project that we're resuscitating after several things. Mike is more up to date on this one than I am. I'll throw him under the bus here for a minute. In this project, we were doing slip lining of pipes, and then we had a lot of point repairs to do where they couldn't slip line. And we had to do point repairs so we could come back and complete the slip lining. And then companies went out. We've had a lot of changeover in personnel, both the actual contractor doing the work and the engineers. We're finally getting back online with that. We have some paperwork going right now for some change orders to get that project back viable and get the rest of that completed on the historic side of town here, the old town site. The next one that we have bring to you is Noah's Ark. That is in the process of being bid. We're taking bids on the 25th, and it will come to you at council on the 1st. Hopefully we'll get the interior work done on the Noah's Ark building out by the power plant. A lot of excitement there. Not as much interest as I thought there would be. It's been done so far, but it again is in the paper tomorrow for the second time, and in several different papers. It should be. Maybe we'll get something more there. We're hoping. We've got some interest, but not as much as I thought. Number 4 of 2020 is our asphalt paving and striping project, which you've seen some striping around town. A little bit of paving here at City Hall. The contractor has overbooked himself, and he's completing the project now, and he'll be back here hopefully by next week, if I'm not mistaken, to do quite a bit more parking lots and some paving up between Desperado and Montes as well. One parking lot included is the PD parking lot that's been ugly for quite some time, and it will be completely redone and restriped, and should be a pretty nice deal, providing some ADA compliance as well there. We have 2 projects that are part of a multimodal CDOT funding grant that we received. I think I came to you with those a while back. One is for bike lane striping here in town. We're going to be doing about 5 miles, 4.5 to 5 miles of bicycle lanes on major roads here in town, linking parks and linking to the Wormhole Edition Trail by the landfill, as well as the Riverwalk and some of the parks downtown. The second part of that is the accessible pedestrian signal upgrades for Main Street, where we will take 4 intersections that currently have traffic lights on Main Street and upgrade to the latest and most modern ADA compatible pedestrian signal heads and buttons, and it'll actually have the audible signals as well. And the time we're done with the directing people as to which way they're walking when they push the button, which street is what they're on as well. A small project we haven't had much luck with is the Children's Museum door replacement, which was part of the, I believe, first quarter of this year, or last quarter of last year, marijuana funding. We put that out to bid and had no responders whatsoever for that project. We are currently in the process of contacting contractors just to get quotes. We can do that once we put it out, get no responders. We can go out and just solicit quotes from these contractors, which we plan to do with that one. 09-2020 is the excavation cut project, where we've had several excavation cuts around town from utility work that have gone neglected for quite some time. We put them all into one bid because it's hard to get somebody to come down and replace 3 square yards of concrete. So we put several of them together into one contract, and we've got a local contractor working on that right now to get somebody buttoned up. Most of this is concrete work, but there is a little bit of asphalt work combined with it as well.
Mr. Beach, I'll just a quick question. Up where I live on the far end of Corundum, there is a big spot that was taken out of the asphalt. Check into that and see if that's on the list down the road.
Okay, I will do that. I don't think that's part of the one that we have right now, but we will definitely take a look at it, make sure.
Okay.
Number 10, 2020 is our curb cuts and sidewalks 2020 phase 1. This is our major curb cut project that is responsible for the DOJ settlement that we have with the Department of Justice. This is phase 1 of 8 phases. We broke it down. I tried to do it as one single project this year for about 140 corners, and that didn't work. We had difficulty getting bonding. We had, as you well know, from the Council of Communications. So we've got that started. That will start next week with the notice to proceed issued today. That will be going out, and we'll get some of that started. Hopefully, contractor will start kind of slow just to get his feelings out and feelers out and take off from there. Also in that same vein is 11-2020 concrete flat work, ADA. This is some concrete work that needs to be done in various places around town, mostly ramps that are not in the DOJ list, but things that needed to be addressed as part of our ADA compliance efforts. Number 13-2020 is the Nevada Avenue ADA improvements. These are ADA improvements that were required with our settlement with Mr. Hamer, as you may or may not know. He started out with 20, we talked him down to 10, and those 10 were all on Nevada Avenue, and those will be going out here shortly. That's being designed in-house by the engineering staff, and hopefully that'll go soon. Some of the smaller ones, there's one small one that has a number, and that's our Central Park instrument install. You may remember that Main Street Group purchased some musical instruments a while back. We had no place to put them, so we've been working on trying to find a place to put them, and we've come up with Central Park area right behind the baseball field, kind of in the center of the park, away from somebody's home, for one thing, because we didn't want to be bothering citizens at 2 o'clock in the morning with drums and conga and all that. So it took us a while to find out, but we think we've got a pretty good idea there. There is also some artwork that was purchased by Arts and Culture Commission that we are working on installing. It's currently working with CDOT to obtain right-of-way access along Route 12, because both of them are in Route 12. One is over across Main Street, the tire shop liquor store, the little triangle there. The other is in the roundabout where the blue heart-shaped artwork is now, and for a sculpture for a horse. Where then that again is CDOT's hands at this point. You may remember back a while ago I brought to you a grant submission for the Fisher's Peak Detention Dam number 2 rehabilitation. That's still in the works. That is in the hands of some designers out of Denver. It was awarded to them as a result of the rating system that the Department of Natural Resources did, and I was involved in that to come up with a design team and design group to further take this project along. That may be still another 6 months to a year before that actually gets underway, though. Last is marijuana funding. Council awarded monies for furnace replacement in City Hall. We working on that rather soon. And also, we've gone forward with the contract for the landfill land purchase that was in the last go-round of marijuana monies as well. I think that's all of the operating, currently open projects. We have several that we've already finished this year. Public Works backup generator that was paid for with marijuana money. We did some work at the Fox Theater for stage stabilization. We did the city manager's office door replacement, so Mike can get in and out of his office. Just so you're paying attention. We did some work on Maple Street sidewalk. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions or try to answer any questions you might have.
I do have a couple of them, Mr. Beach. The bike lanes striping, when might that start?
That's entirely in CDOT's hands at this point. We just sent a letter off to them this afternoon, finding out where we are, because we have some issues with some pedestrian signals at the moment, just tied to that same project. And we were wanting to find out if we could order the pedestrian signals under the grant monies, or if we had to wait until the granting intergovernmental agreement was all signed and all that contract.
And the other question I had is, you had those, I know those musical instruments that you're going to be putting at Central Park. Where you're putting them at is not, hopefully not going to interfere with, when we are able to get back to kids playing baseball and soccer and all that type of thing. I know that the high school team uses it for practices. It's not going to interfere. That would be the big question.
No, it's just off the walking trail, kind of on the fringes of all that. It's on the fringes of the lower field, the fringes of the upper field, the fringes of the lake. It's in the kind of a point there near the pit restroom that's in the halfway point between the walking trail and the other side of the walking trail from that. Good, I don't know,
Okay.
100 feet, 150 feet away.
Okay, now Rusty, do you have any questions for Mr. Beach?
I do not, but I would like to just express my appreciation for the update. It's nice to get this. It's nice to hear about what we completed and where we're at on a lot of stuff. Thank you very much.
Okay. Ms. Ogletree?
You're welcome, sir. And I missed bigly, excuse me, Mayor. The big one you guys just awarded last week is 2 weeks ago, the Santa Fe Trail Surface Improvement. That's 14/2019. That will be, we issued notice of awards. We're waiting to get bonding back to the winning bidder, Habitat Construction. And as soon as we can get the awards, or excuse me, the bonds, an agreement will be signed, and we'll issue a notice to proceed for that, get that going.
Good. Good to hear. Ms. Ogletree?
Thank you, Mr. Beach, so much. I took careful notes so that as people ask me, I can tell them where things are. But I really do appreciate your efforts, and I feel very good about the way that the city is shaping up. Thank you.
Ms. Grego?
Thank you. Again, you can call me with any questions.
Okay.
Tom, this might not be in your, but how come the city has never put any more signal lights on some of these intersections? Increased quite a bit. Is there anything in the works? I don't know if that's a capital improvement project or how that works, but I was just wondering, inquiring minds want to know, Tom.
We really haven't discussed that. I mean, I told somebody who lived back east, a friend of mine from back east, that this is the only town I've ever lived in where we actually took a traffic light out over on Pine in Nevada. I remember the Pine in Nevada light, and it was there forever, and then also we took it out, and I just, okay, well, I guess. So really, I don't have an answer for you, Mr. Grego.
Okay. Mr. DeBono?
Thank you, Tom.
Oh yes, I just wanted to thank you also, Tom, for the great work you do as the Public Works Director and Project Manager, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Williamson?
It's a staff effort.
I have no questions pertaining to the projects described. Tom, thank you for your time. I do appreciate it.
And Tom, thanks for the update. I wrote all the items that you listed down, and keep us abreast of completions as time goes along. So it's good to see that we're doing some good work out there.
If I may, I've got a list of 2019 and 2020 projects on my desk here. And the 2019 project, there's I'd say 12 or 13 of them we completed last year. And they're marked off, they're checked off, and there's already been, like I said, 6 completed this year. So, and this is August, so we're doing pretty good.
Okay.
Always can do more, but.
Mr. Mayor, before Tom left, I did have a question not pertaining to the projects he listed, but would appreciate his input. I didn't want to commandeer the meeting.
Okay. Mr. Valentine, do you have anything to add?
Yes, Mayor. Just today, half an hour ago, I signed notice of substantial completion on our water line project. We are straight through the new line on the Santa Fe Trail water project. We filed a notice of final settlement. They are in the process of cleaning up and doing punch list items, but that was a big one that it's good to see done in water traveling through the pipe. Speaking of water traveling through the pipe, we've seen our monsoon come and go, and it did not help us with our water supply. I would just forewarn you that at your next regular meeting, we will have consideration of a resolution to go to level 2 water restriction. That would mean, odd, even sides of the street, watering in morning or the evening, odd, even, watering between 10 and 4. We're sure that will help us and get us through, this time, and we could get some bigger rains, but right now we're on priority 3 of our water rights, and we're taking out more water out of the dam than we're putting in. So as we get to the top priorities, if there you could have that priority, but if there's nothing coming down the stream, you can't take a priority from nothing. So I think it's wise to go to the next level and
Mr. Williamson, go ahead. Go ahead, continue, Mike.
I've seen Rusty. I was going to say the musical instruments. You could probably play the blues on them. They're pretty cool. Be right down.
Mr. Williamson, did you have your hand raised?
Along with moving to the other level of water restrictions, could we please have possibly with adding police officers, with our public relations and everybody else, have a little more enforcement of even the stage that we're in. I see too many people. I mentioned something to somebody, and them knowing who I was told me to mind my own damn business. And so we need some enforcement to go along with it. Instead of just targeting the people that will follow the rules, let's target some of the people that choose to break the rules. And second, we had asked before when we went into water restrictions about notification to our top 10 users. Did that ever happen, to ask them to assist us in conserving water?
That did when we went into the level we're in now, level 1. We did notify those top. I think we notified the top 25 just to let them know. When we go into level 2, we will reiterate that. So yeah.
Mr. Williamson, did you have your hand raised a bit ago?
I did. I had a question concerning a potential future project, if now would be appropriate, Mr. Mayor.
Sure.
I've had occasion to interact with the baseball coach at the at TSJC, And I know the field over there is a unique situation. It's utilized by many agencies. I probably wouldn't get them all if I listed it, so I'm not going to attempt that. But it's my understanding that they have significant challenges when attempting to recruit individuals. So this is what I would like to see. If Trinidad, if it's appropriate for us to, if we are the people that are the major shareholders and the owner of it, if we couldn't orchestrate some effort over there that would be able to help them with the situation. I mean, maybe like and I don't, committees are generally non-productive, I think. But I think it would be a great idea if we could get the major shareholders together. I would say the baseball coach, Tom potentially, maybe a city council member, I'm not sure. I would like to volunteer for that. And we could plan to help better that situation. And if we could strengthen their sports program, I think that would be a benefit to TSJC, to Trinidad, to everybody involved. And in speaking to them, I think it'd be helpful. I'm done now.
Well, I think what you can do, Mr. Williamson, is get with Mike and cover all those aspects that you're talking about and see if there's anything, because I do know that there's always been some issues between the college, the high school. So anyway, Mr. Valentine, you had your hand raised.
Triggers.
I just wanted to say we've had, over my 30 years here, we've had numerous agreements with all involved. It always seems to fall out, but I will give it my best shot. I agree with you. It is a city-owned facility, and each entity thinks they deserve this more than the other. So we'll do our best to solve it, and I agree that it's a beautiful facility, and it's a good recruiting tool. I know that. It's part of getting athletes to come here into the field and play on. So
I appreciate that, Mr. Valentine. I will definitely touch base with you and tell you what I was seeing and thinking. I appreciate that.
you bet.
Mr. Downs, do you have anything?
Mayor?
Yes. Yes.
It's Tom Beach again. I actually totally left off 3 different other projects we have going. One is the grandstand replacement at the Park Field. We have it in design concept. I've got a couple pictures hanging on my whiteboard behind me that you guys can't see because they're on the camera. But it is in process. Part of that process would be to contact the entities that are involved with that, the triggers, the college, the high school, and get everybody's input into the design and redesign and remanufacturing basically of the stadium. So that's something that is around the corner for sure. The other that we fully spaced out was one was the first phase 1 of the sewer line replacement through Americana Road in La Puerta that's recently been completed. And also the fact that the Americana Road project, which goes through by the Purple Toad, soon to be Walter's roof of, or I believe what it's called, is almost out for bid. It is ready to go. So that would facilitate the building of the hotel, as well as the numerous pad sites and other amenities down in that area when it comes around. So that's almost ready to go into bid as well. So
Okay.
forgive me for forgetting about those.
That's fine. Okay. Mr. Downs, do you have anything?
I do not, Mayor. Thank you for asking. I don't have anything else.
Okay. Council, do you have any other items that you would like to put on for future work sessions? Mr. Goodall?
I have,
Miss
No,
Okay. Miss Ogletree?
Thank you, Mayor. I spent some time on our website today, and I was looking for where we explain the policies and the the prohibitions around marijuana just in preparation for this meeting, and I found it very difficult to find. When you search on our search bar on our website and just put in the word marijuana, you get 0 results. So I think, and as I was going through it, I was realizing we're missing out on many, many opportunities on that website to let people know about our city. As you go from page to page, there are pages that are basically blank or have very little information. There's not even a link to Visit Trinidad, Colorado, which is our major marketing tool for the city. And I like, if it's appropriate, and maybe it's not, a work session on our website to how we might improve it, because we're missing out on all kinds of opportunities. We could put even on our website what projects we're working on and where they are, so that people have an idea of what is going on in the city better.
Okay, Mr. Valentine, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I'd like to address that somewhat. Yeah, our website needs some work, and we've all talked about it internally, but part of it is part of our DOJ settlement, along with the ramps and the roads and everything else, is our website, and it's kind of hamstrung us a bit, and we've looked at options, so definitely warrants a work session and an idea on how to improve. But again, we pay a company that monitors it for content, and a lot of our content will be very costly to get it DOJ compatible. But just so you know.
The other thing too is, coordinating with the tourism board so everything is on there. Ms. Grego?
Yes, sir. If you all recall at our last meeting, Mrs. Lee Lopez mentioned about the mosquito spray, and I looked on social media, and there's a Facebook page called Purgatory Valley Gardeners, but there's a lot of people that are concerned about it. I think we need to see is it mandated by law that we do that? Is it mandated that we have to use the chemicals we use to do it? I looked online today, and it shows that Trinidad is a moderate risk for mosquitoes. So, and we're almost at the end of the season. So I think, when there's that many people concerned about it, I believe we need to address that maybe in another session.
Well, last week when that lady spoke up, I asked her to contact Mr. Valentine. I don't know if she ever did. Did she contact you?
Mayor, I received an email this morning, and I replied back to ask her what time she'd be available to sit and speak on the issue. So
okay.
It's moving forward.
Okay. Yeah, to answer your question, Ms. Grego, is let's wait and see. There were some alternatives that evidently this lady had, she was aware of. So let's see what shakes out with her meeting with Mike, and then we go forward. Mr. DeBono?
Okay,
We got one more?
Sorry, I got one more.
Okay.
Yes, sir, I'm sorry. Mike and female Aaron and I went to the police department a couple weeks ago to talk about code enforcement. The police department gave us a couple of suggestions they would like to see done to try and alleviate some of their work for what they have to do, especially on abandoned vehicles and the number of abandoned vehicles on private property. And I'm wondering if council has any desire to continue on and see if we can refine that so the code enforcement isn't so cumbersome.
Mr. Downs, do you have an answer to that? Do we have authority to go into private property and do anything with it?
Well, Mayor, as I understand the question, are we wanted to revisit the existing code to help law enforcement. Is that
Correct.
the point? Okay.
Correct.
So
They're mentioning something about, requiring people to register their cars if they're parked on private property. Some of them are just abandoned.
Well, I think we can certainly explore that. I would want to kind of research that a bit before I give you an answer. But I think it makes sense. I know that's an ongoing problem, and you know, it has been for a while. So I'd be happy to look into that if that's your desire.
If the council would like to do it, Aaron, Ogletree, and Mike were there. Do you have anything to add to that?
I do not. I think it's a good idea. I think we should work with them closely and find out what they need in particular and see if we can make things work more efficiently for them. Also, I think it's good for us to learn about what they're doing. I think they have hired on some more people to handle code enforcement work, not just Sergeant Haddow, and I think that will help because I think it's been too much for one person to do.
Mr. Downs, I think, take it to that next step and do some investigation as to what we can and can't do, maybe.
Sure, I'll be happy to do that, Mayor.
Okay. Anything else, Ms. Kriegel? Mr. DeBono?
Not at this time, sir, no.
Okay. Mr. Williamson, anything else?
I appreciate that, Mr. Mayor. I did have one thing. I also agree with Councilwoman Riego. I think that the mosquito control really needs a good hard look at. I know it's late in the season. Obviously, there is pros and cons, but I think that we should look at it just a reason to do something because we always have isn't the best answer. So I think we need to take a real good look at that.
Okay. Okay. If there's nothing else, this work session is adjourned. Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
All right, thank you.